Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Mr. Clive Oseman, a wonderful poet, author, comedian, and dramatist from across the sea. East, in this case, is actually apt. He comes from that most famous of cultural meccas, Swindon.
I thought you was going to say the UK then. Yeah,
No, 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 no.
I unfortunately am in Swindon. I'm not from Swindon, but I am unfortunately in Swindon.
Well, then where in the heck are you from then?
Birmingham.
Ah, how nice. So, my brother, thank you for coming to Poets of the East. As you can probably tell, this is one of the poets that I really, really enjoy his work. I've enjoyed it for years, and I hope to enjoy it for another couple weeks anyway. So here we go. Clive, my friend, what is the earliest book you remember enjoying as a child?
Oh, blimey.
I only ask tough questions of poets, you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, questions about childhood are very difficult for me. But uh, I mean, when I was younger, I didn't read much literature. I was very much into sport, and I would read a lot of books about cricket in particular. And
Uh-huh.
so,
Not grasshoppers?
I don't remember what would be the first fictional book.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Good question, good answer. So you were one of the kids going out in the park and in the yard and batting the ball around and all that stuff.
I wish.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, Sorry to say this, but could we avoid
Oh, sure.
childhood as much as
Sure, sure.
possible, please?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Then let me lose the first half of my questions. Uh, when you were during your school days, uh, do you were there writers that inspired you that you thought, wow, that's good stuff. In other words, reading for school is one thing, reading for enjoyment is something else. Do you remember your first books reading for enjoyment?
Um, I'm good at this, aren't I?
Yeah.
Um,
Or movies, or musicians, or bands, or a hell of
yeah.
a team.
uh, I mean, talking music, I love ska, and I loved British two-tone in the like late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
Um, as I say, most of my reading when I was younger was reference books and in sport. I
Okay.
was absolutely sports mad. Not so much from a playing angle because of health
Enthusiasm.
difficulties,
Yeah.
but from watching and reading.
Okay. Okay. There are people who follow the sports teams with great enthusiasm. What was the team that you enjoyed most when you were young?
Well, I'm a big Birmingham City fan in soccer, as you call it, football over here.
Okay.
We've never been very good. We've won about two trophies in about 150 years, but
Well,
they're the team I first went to see. It's my local team, so
uh-huh.
uh,
Uh-huh.
I've always supported them. Um,
Okay.
and
Now,
Warwickshire County Cricket Club as well.
okay. So cricket and soccer, football. Um, Let me ask you this. When you were in your later scholastic years, did you uh, were you encouraged to do some writing, or was it really just something you did on your own without relation to education or academics?
Um, I didn't do much school.
Oh, okay.
It's the best answer to that one.
That's
I had a
fine.
lot
That's
of
fine.
illness when I was younger,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
and there were certain other circumstances as well.
Yeah.
And really, after the age of about 12, I did very little school.
Okay. Okay. Well, there are great minds and great artists who were, barely touched by formal education. And I think you've certainly accomplished that, a well-educated man on your own. All right, let me ask you this. When did you enter the world of letters? Was it uh, in through clubs, through music? When did you start writing and for fun?
Um, I started writing. I did a little bit of writing for fun, probably when I was 15, 16, something like that. But obviously never did anything with it. It was just something to do.
Yeah.
I started writing seriously around about early 2000s. Um, and I used to write a lot of serious stuff, and especially a lot of Japanese short form like haiku and tanka and
Oh,
that.
really?
And then I started going to open mics. I was a let's say a late developer.
Uh-huh.
I started going to open mics. I used to write some poetry, and I was on one or two online in the days of AOL
Right.
message
Oh, yeah.
boards and things like that. And I met Nick Lovell through complete chance. He lives in Swindon as well. Um, and somebody I knew online who I'd never met in reality before I'd ever met Nick. Nick was at the Worcester Poetry Slam, and Kevin, his name, the person who I knew online, got talking to Nick and said, "Oh," and when he found out where he was from, he was like, "Oh, I know somebody who lives in Swindon who writes poetry, you know," and he sort of put us in touch with each other. I started going to open mics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was writing serious stuff, and I was going through a difficult time, well, a turbulent time, in fact,
Sure.
personally. So I wrote a lot of what I might call woe is me poetry at that time, um, and I started going to open mics. Was sort of enjoying it, but I was on the point of giving it up because I didn't think it was really for me. When I went to an event called Hammer and Tongue in Bristol with Nick, and I just thought it was going to be another open mic like all the other ones I've been to, where I felt a little bit out of place. I was very shy at that time, and
Sure.
I still am to a degree, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, I
And
completely believe it. Some of us
and
only perform out of necessity.
yeah. And I went to what I thought was an open mic, and it turned out to be a slam with a headliner. So I wasn't competing; I was just watching. And the slam was brilliant. I've never seen slam poetry before. And then the headliner was a guy who you may have heard of because he's well known, obviously, especially in Britain. Luke Wright was headlining, and I was just gobsmacked. My jaw was on the floor, and this is what I want to do, you know. And I found out then that it's called performance poetry rather than page poetry,
Right.
and I was hooked straight away. I thought this is what I want to do, and I mean that night actually changed my life because I was on the point of giving up the open mics, and I was lonely at the time, and I was working hard and I hadn't got much of a social life, and I was just about to give, and then I discovered what I really wanted to do, and met a whole group of people, went to a lot of different events, and it just went from there, really.
Okay. Now, you know, and I know that slam poetry I'm going to say several fingers on that hand. There's the emotional thing, there's the complain about the world thing, and then there's some very pointed stuff, as well as the personal revelatory. Oh my God, let me share the pain I'm in and have been through and all that. What would you say that? How did you find your way into it? What kind of approach did you take initially? And then how do you feel that you've changed or modified or grown in that performance poetry spot?
Well, initially, I was writing a lot of political stuff and personal stuff, with the occasional bit of comedy. And I was sort of mixing it up, and sometimes I'd be serious, sometimes I wouldn't. Um, and then came COVID, and obviously everything was shut down, and
Right.
I was going insane. You know, especially with social media and the way it was with all the conspiracy theories and all the people talking absolute rubbish, and I was going insane. And I thought the only medicine was laughter. So I started concentrating then on humorous stuff rather than mixing it up, and never really went back.
Yeah, yeah. I think the first stuff I remember you doing was your should we say, poking a little good fun at the Royals.
Yeah,
And certainly, with my this side of the Atlantic bias, I have a lot of sympathy for that. And although I know that there are many people who still find the institution laudable and worthy and all that, but it seems like an expensive habit to me. I think with a poet's wallet. Uh,
yeah.
let me ask you this. When I guess that's probably the time period when you really begin to think of yourself as a performing writer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was sort of semi-established on the spoken word scene when COVID came. I was getting through a few feature sets and things like that. But I just changed direction completely then, and I do have a lot of contempt for the royal family, and the Queen at that time seemed the perfect target.
Uh, Sir, your humor about the royals was just so powerful and so effective, even for those of us who are not, should we say, intimately engaged in the royal lifestyle, if you will. But it was so such good satire that you really made a huge impression on, I know, so many poets that we both know and have come to love over the many years. Let me ask you this. Um, One of the questions that I always like to ask writers is uh, when you think about the process of writing, which is kind of funny, but anyway, when you think about writing, do you tend to write by should we say, a rigorous athletic approach where you write every day, or do you more wait until inspiration moves you? In that
Um,
spectrum from write every day to only when inspiration, where do you fall?
very much in the latter. I mean, I'm writing a bit more regularly now because obviously I was made redundant from work in December, and I decided basically to take early retirement. So I'm writing more and trying to be a bit more disciplined now. But in general, I tend to be the type that will have a sudden flash of inspiration when I'm in the shower or when I wake up in the morning, and I need to get it written down there and then. Um,
Okay.
so
I
um,
tend to as I lay myself down in bed to relax, that's when I'll get three ideas that
yeah,
I better write down right now or else they're gone.
yeah.
Because those promises that I'll remember in the morning are just
Oh, it's fatal.
not even written in sand.
I've done that so many times. I'll be just sort of drifting off, and I'll think, what a fantastic idea that is. But I'll remember it,
Right.
and then you wake up the next morning, and it's just gone.
Okay. Um, Next, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little and say, can you name? I mean, we all know and love many contemporary poets. I like that we can in this show address talking to live poets performing right now. Are there any poets in never mind, never mind. Scratch the question. I won't ask. I was going to ask you if you wanted to pick one or two poets that today that make an impression on you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there are so many. You could make a list as long as your arm, really.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I will mention Nick Lovell, who, although he doesn't write much these days, is sort of had a dry spell, but it was a big influence on me and a big help. Chloe Jacquet, who we don't see much on Zoom, but is a brilliant poet who did a lot for me um, when I was sort of emerging. I met her at a poetry slam, and she became a good friend. And she became in my early days. There were two people that I could trust to tell me if something wasn't going to work or if it was rubbish, and that was Nick and Chloe. Because they would tell me in a diplomatic way, because my confidence at that time, well, it still is, but my confidence at that time was very brittle. So yeah, Nick and Chloe in the early days were massive for me.
Thank you, sir.
Um,
Thank you.
and then Robert Garnham, who is a comedy poet from down in Devon. Um, he he's been a massive influence on my material and my style. I mean, I couldn't compare myself to Robert because I think Robert's a genius, but it's very, very funny. And he's been a big influence on me. And then now, of course, there's obviously Nayma Chamchoun is, I think, is absolutely superb poet. And so many others. I mean,
Sure, sure. Like I said, it's
Derek,
not a
Derek Doran is a name that is not very well known outside his own area, but he is a superb poet. He really is, and he does some serious stuff, but some comedy stuff,
okay.
and
All right. Thank you so much. Are there themes or topics that you find yourself addressing again and again?
um, I, d- I like surrealism and absurdism, so a lot of my stuff includes that sort of thing, like hamsters playing the piano and pandas standing in the Swindon streets playing guitars and things like that. But as for actual themes, obviously still political, although I'll do it a bit more subtly now than I used to. I'm still very political, very left wing, and um, yeah, I would say they're the main things, really.
I have to tell you that one of my recent concoctions, a piece that was just leapt into my mind from an incident at a Greek restaurant. There is an homage to you in the middle of it, where I take and swap some letters around. And as the inspiration came to me to do it, I thought, this is for Clive. This one, this section right here, this is the Clive section.
Yeah, I really should have mentioned that as a regular theme, shouldn't I? Yeah,
But
typos, misheard things, letter swapping, that sort
yeah,
of thing.
it,
Yeah,
it
that's a big
it's a
favourite.
device that, while it could be misused or overused, you do it so delicately, you do it so carefully that it's always spot on. And I've always admired the way you make that work. Like I said, it could be a simple device, but you use it so well. It's really one of the marvels of what you do, brother.
Thank you. I
Okay,
mean that. Usually, I work harder on those poems than I do on any others,
I
to be
bet, I
honest,
bet.
because it'll usually start when I'll either misread something or mishear something, or I might think, oh, if you just swap those two letters round in that word, it would be really funny.
Yeah,
And then I start to think, right, take that as a base, and then I'll start to deliberately think of other words with those letters, and just keep thinking and writing them down as I think of anything that might be amusing. And then when I think I've got enough, then I'll sort of make the story around them.
I'm going to send you a copy of that poem. It's
Yeah, I'd
called
love to see it.
Stanley and Livingston, and see if you can spot my little switch around. But like I say, that's a little homage to you. I literally, I'm seeing your face as I was writing that. Okay, next. Do you feel that poets or artists or authors have a responsibility to address contemporary issues?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's really a responsibility. You know, uh, I mean, I know people that write fantastic comedy poetry, for example, that is really nothing to do with contemporary issues. So I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, but I think those that do are very important.
okay. All right, next. if a young person were to come up to you and ask, is practicing poetry important? I mean, is it something I should dedicate my life to? Or is it such a small part of the universe that it's really, I should do something else?
I'd say everybody's different and they would just have to follow their own inclination, really. I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, poetry and spoken word has been a massive part of my life and it changed my life. But obviously, everybody's circumstances are different.
I
So
mean,
I, I
what would
think,
the world be like without a Gilbert and Sullivan, for example?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's, you have to follow. I think it's important to follow whatever wherever your mind takes you, rather than think I've got to do this and I need I've got to study to be an accountant or whatever. If your inclinations are towards art, then yeah, definitely pursue it. If you not too keen on money.
I hear I got into poetry for the money, man. Come on. Okay. Um, in your mind, sir, and in your insight, what makes a good poet?
Oh, somebody who can express their thoughts and their observations and express them in an entertaining way or an insightful way, depending on what the point is. I mean, obviously, um, I'm doing mainly comedy stuff, but um, I just think the expressing their observations clearly and in an entertaining way is the main thing.
Okay. Now, another one of those philosophical questions. Is narrative important to poetry?
I would say so. Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
agree completely.
yeah,
I remember any number of people telling me as a young poet, these poets they don't make any sense at all. And so I've always kind of felt it important to give a narrative line. Although you and I both know poets who don't so much tell stories with their poetry, but just make pretty metaphors,
yeah,
who give you something charming to think about. I'm
yeah,
thinking of Robert Cole, for example, an extraordinary poet who, often, I won't say always, but often just makes what I call chime poetry. In other words, a pretty thing, an interesting picture, boom, 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 boom. Okay, now you're done. There's not a real narrative arc to it, but that sort of thing I think is an interesting question. And then last, my friend, and here's a tricky one. Do you have a question for me?
um, no, I don't think so. Although, I'll put you on the spot. Who are your favourite contemporary poets?
Wow, good question. Good question. You're at top of that list. I think I agree with you that Nayma is an extraordinary poet. Uh, I find Finn Hall's work very nice. Another poet whose work I enjoy a lot is Leslie Constable.
Yeah,
Really, really interesting stuff. And uh, she used to be a journalist, so she brings kind of a very analytical to it, but also at the same time, such charming metaphorical whimsy to it. And
and a great reading voice as well.
just extraordinary. And there's another poet whose work I enjoy a lot is Shopi Chowdhury. She's
Yeah,
one of my poet friends from the East, and she has a very, very. I tend to think of her writing as very much like Japanese painting. It's delicate, it's soft, it's pastels, but there's always an urgency in it that is amazing. And but like you said, there's so many poets there, and I ask this question always with kind of tongue in cheek because my first introduction to real poetry readings a lot in a large venue was a poetry contest. They had poetry contests in Miami, in the arts district. And I used to think, what a stupid idea, because every poet has their own unique take. And, it's like comparing garnets and diamonds, or coal when you need it to bitumen. I mean, they're all different. They're all wonderful in their own way. So I always I ask that question, and sort of think, God, I hope nobody asked me to say that. But yeah, there's so many wonderful poets out there, just so many marvelous, marvelous poets, and I enjoy every one. But we all have our standouts. Okay.
I mean, when you are asked that question, it's straight away. As soon as you finish, you think of, oh, I should have said them. I should have said them. I should,
Oh yeah,
I mean, I've thought of at least three people who I should have said.
yeah.
When you asked me, and like you say, there's just so many.
And every one, I think of it as, you've got Finn Hall's Blot from the Blue. You've got David Sirwaz, wonderful spoken word online. Prasanna Kumar, his Fertile Brains, and every one of those brings such marvelous people. The Dane, the stuff that Dane does is wonderful. More and more, Michael Sendler has been taking on some of that hosting stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's definitely somebody I should have mentioned as well.
yeah, Sterling Warner out in the Northwest. Wonderful stuff. Just amazing, powerful stuff. My dear friend and brother, Marcia Dudan Duta, a marvelous poet from Romania who's unfortunately having some health issues. Every one of them, I love their work. It's just amazing. But you're gonna find a few baubles that do stand out. So you stand out for me, my friend. I've always enjoyed your work. Okay, now the fun part. Brother Clive, would you take the mic, sir, and take us wherever you want to take us for the next while?
No. Yes, of course I will. Right, you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to start with talking of mishearing things, and so that's yeah. I'm going to start with a fairly recent one that I've written called "Never Trust an Auto Cue," but it's like a subtitle of "It's All Billy's Fault." I'm in a philosophical mood, and I'm wondering why the Western world is obsessed with food. You've probably never thought about it, may not even give a shit, but let me enlighten you. Art and culture are riddled with references to food. I blame Shakespeare. Yes, Shakespeare. The celebrated bard, usurper of the old guard, but in seemingly harmless lines, he started this intellectual decline. How? You may well ask. Well, take a look at his plays. Omelette, A Midsummer Ice Cream, The Merchant of Venison, Richard the Curd, Troilus and Cress Eater, The Two Emmental Men of Verona. He may well have stolen the idea from Avocado da Vinci and his painting of Verona pizza, but he elevated it to a whole new level. And of course, right through the ages, artists and poets have embraced it. Just think about it. Dylan Thomas wrote, "Do not go gentle into that bun fight." Tracy Emin is famous for her unmade bread. And it's no coincidence that the Royal Halibut Hall is so close to the Victoria and Halibut Museum. And it doesn't stop there. Oh no, movies. The Good, Kebab and the Ugly. Lawrence of Arrabbiata. When Harry Met Salad. Inglorious Bratwurst. Jeez. You would think. No, hang on. Music is under the spell too. We got the Stew Fighters. Madonna singing Papa Don't Preach. Florence and the Tagine. And two for the price of one with jelly cinnamon. You would think sport would escape it, but oh no. Thanks to this weird obsession We have sports people the world over trying to win championships, world championships, European championships, and so on and so on. And not to mention poetry slam championships. There are so many lovers. There are so many others whose lives have been blighted by this obsession. Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones. Gravy Crockett, the king of the wild frontier. TV personality Fanny Haddock. Writer Rhubarb Cartland. Singer and civil rights activist Semolina Horn. Spotted Dick Van Dyke. And most famously, Boris Pasternak. I bet he got properly cheesed off. So that's that one.
Very nice. Bravo.
The next one is called Two Negatives. Now, I'm not a very educated man, as I already mentioned, but I was always led to believe that if you multiplied two negatives, you always got a positive. This, I thought, would be perhaps the most important lesson I would ever learn. But the school books lied, and the teachers lied. What sort of example is that to set to the kids? I would sue them, but I expect most of them are dead by now. Serves them right, if you ask me. I wasn't greedy. For heaven's sake, I worked hard, contributed to society with my taxes, always knowing I had an ace up my sleeve. Or more accurately, thinking I did. Then it got too much. I worked in a shitty job with shitty people, and they hated me too. The pay was okay, but if I stayed another day, I would probably have flipped. So it was time for me to cash in my chips. I told the boss to go fuck himself and sailed off into the sunset. There was only one problem, but it was a big one. The teachers had told us the bloody theory, but they neglected to teach us how to put it into practice. So my £1,000 overdraft with Barclays and my £1,000 overdraft with Lloyds refused to get it on. Apparently these two negative bank accounts rejected each other like two pandas in a zoo. I didn't know what to do. The Citizens Advice Bureau wouldn't help me, lawyers said I had no case, and Martin Lewis, the money man, looked at me like I was a fucking lunatic. So my £1 million pension pot from two £1,000 negatives has disappeared, if it ever existed, and I'm in debt up to my neck. My boss is too busy fucking himself to consider having me back. It's all a bit of a mess. So if anyone tries to tell you the lie about two negatives, ask them to prove it. If you then show me how it's done, I'll give you a tidy sum. Thank you.
Bravo, sir.
Two negative bank accounts do not multiply and make a positive, unfortunately. Right, the next one was written very recently. Like much of the world, we are absolutely baking in the UK at the moment. Never known a summer like it. Last year was the hottest summer on record, but this year is like, you think last year was hot. It's absolutely incredible at times. And we've still got the climate change deniers who say, oh, well, we had a hot summer in 1976 that was just as hot as this. It's just summer. And they drive me up the wall, and this is written about them. It's called heat wave. Heat wave? Heat wave? Bloody heat wave. You don't know the meaning of the word. Heat wave. Don't make me laugh. 1976. That was what you call a heat wave. Yeah. 1976. What people don't realise is that it all started in February when it snowed on the 14th and was 90 degrees the next day. People thought it was because Valentine's Day had been particularly orgasmic and steamy. But whatever the reason, it didn't let up for months. Christ, no. By April, the temperature was in the 40s, that's Celsius, and water was so scarce you could be jailed for 3 years for having a shower. I remember the smell of my parents. Makes me gag even now. Mary Whitehouse was admitted to hospital because women were showing too much flesh. And people were taking holidays in the Burmese jungle for a bit of respite. The smell on the outbound journey was like an atomic bomb of hygiene warfare, and a lot of people didn't survive it. By the middle of July, people were drinking toilet water, or as some people called it, skull lager. So don't come moaning to me about fucking heat waves. Global warming, my arse. Just a load of woke nonsense, if you ask me. So, yeah, the climate change deniers and people that think everything in their day was bigger and better than now. Drives you mad. And I'm not young, but it still drives me mad. Right, the next one's a bit different. It's more of a bit of flash fiction, really, than a poem, and it's called Sid. Once upon a time, there was this writing geezer called Sid who started his stories with the words once upon a time because he thought it was the done thing. But it wasn't. And the other storytellers took the piss out of him because people can be bastards like that. Sid didn't like being laughed at for some reason, and one Thursday night on an open mic, he was mocked by Fred, who had published 14 poetry collections, selling a total of 9 copies in 16 years, all to his various ex-wives before they were exes. Sid had only turned to storytelling because he thought it would be easier than poetry. He had, after all, witnessed Fred's efforts to sell his books. But it wasn't easier. Starting a story with Once Upon a Time is pretty fucking lame, to be honest. Oh, I know I just did that, but I was only making a point, and it seemed appropriate. Sid wasn't making a point. He was just a twat. Anyway, I'm not telling this story very well, am I? Okay, so, start again. Sid wrote a story and read it as an open mic. Fred laughed at the way he started the story. So Sid did nothing less than disembowel him and feed him to his cat. I'll spare you the gory details, but suffice to say that Sid's writing must most definitely have improved drastically after he was murdered because his self-published books. Sorry, I've messed that up. I'll spare you the gory details, but suffice to say that Sid's writing must have improved drastically because his self-published books subsequently sold very well at open mic nights. I must stress that I am not advocating disemboweling people to sell books. On the contrary, I'm saying don't laugh at poor writers. Not only is it terrible etiquette, some of us are fucking nuts. The end. So yeah, that was a bit different. And
Absolutely.
and now another story. This is called Family. Now, I must stress that this is fiction. Obviously, it's well known that I don't particularly have family, shall we say. But this is not about them. It's fiction. It's called Family. I know this is going to sound overly sensitive, but I'd carried the pain for nearly 8 years. A pain that ate away at me and made me feel like I'd been stabbed from the inside out or discovered my wife was having an affair with Nigel Farage. I could never forget when I phoned my sister Carla to apologise for not being in touch and explained that I'd been in hospital after tripping over the cat at the top of the stairs, breaking an arm and several ribs, and having severe concussion. And she replied that she hadn't noticed because she'd had problems of her own. Her TV had stopped working and George had gone missing. In that order. George was not a human or even an animal, but a garden gnome that she bought for 50p as a jumble sale. This demonstrated to me how unimportant I am to the rest of the tribe. This was the one that I was always closest to, and yet a 50p garden gnome was a bigger story than what had happened to me. She didn't even ask if the cat was okay. But I guess, in some ways, that would have made it worse. I tried to hide the hurt at the time, but I did stop sending her money every time she said she was broke. I've always felt that one day I would get the chance to turn the tables, and that chance finally came last week, when she phoned me in a panic to tell me her husband, John, a racist piece of filth who thinks the sun shines out of Farage's arse and will probably feel very honoured if his hero had a thing with his wife, had been arrested for sending malicious communications online. My time had come, but after years of playing out in my head the moment she would need sympathy, I was gripped by indecision. How should I handle this? My first thought was to make a crass joke and comment on what a relief it must be for her that she could now have some fun. But there was a chance that she would see the joke and it would relieve her stress just for a moment, and that wouldn't do. I wanted to make her feel what I felt and make it last. My next thought was, it could be worse, you could have murdered him. But somehow that felt inadequate and maybe even true. Murdering him must have entered her mind at some stage of their relationship. I hardly ever spoke to the bloke, but still wouldn't have minded dropping a bit of Novichok on his door handle. I thought of just ignoring what she said and telling her about the latest plot in her favourite soap opera. But no, that's too banal. Although it would have mentioned the lengthy jail sentence for her favourite character, which the scriptwriter probably deserved more, to be honest. It still wasn't quite brutal enough to repay the debt I owed her. I could say, serves him right, the waste of spunk. But she probably didn't need me to tell her that, so it was pretty lame. It was a pretty lame idea. And then it hit me. The ultimate, all about me reply that would surely hurt. Well, if it's any consolation, I could say, I ripped out a toenail when I went jogging earlier, bringing home to her that I felt my toenail had more worth than her husband. I know how fucking annoying it is when someone says, if it's any consolation in these circumstances, as if hearing of a friend or relative's travails could somehow bring solace to you. If that actually works for you, you're a pretty shitty person, in my opinion. But right at that moment, I wanted to be 8 years worth of shitty. Going through all these thoughts, you could be forgiven for imagining I was thinking for a long time, but in fact, they all happened so quickly that before I could utter anything, I snapped back into reality, stumbled over my words, and blurted out, I'm sorry to hear that. I hate myself. I will never get a better chance, and I blew it. So that's that one. Little messages. I do hate that. When you tell somebody something really bad and they go, "Oh well, if it's any consolation, I hurt my finger today." I really, really hate that. But anyway, on to the next piece. This is called Checkmate. I used to play a lot of chess at one time. I haven't played for years, but this is called Checkmate. Dear British Chess Federation, or should that be Brutish Chess Federation? I think the game you promote needs a massive overhaul to bring it into the 21st century. I used to enjoy the game, and I have to say that is a painful confession. I pray every night that I will not go to hell. It's bad enough living in Swindon without having the afterlife ruined in a similar way because of a mistake I made as a naive kid. Let's examine it, shall we? Chess. It's black against white. White always has the privilege of moving first, immediately putting the black pieces at a disadvantage. But that's not all, is it? Let's face it, the queen does a lot of the running around, while the king only ever moves one square at a time, unless the spineless bastard is bolting into his castle for safety. I would say entering his rook, but that sounds depraved even on royal standards. Also, where is Prince Andrew? Nowhere to be seen. Pizza Express, probably. Or maybe he's in some sort of club alongside the like-minded bishops. Anyway, the king does fuck all except watch the pawns suffer, but if he gets killed, that's it. Game over. Yet the busy queen can die, and is sometimes even deliberately sacrificed, and no one really gives a shit. Did you see that queen sacrifice? Sheer genius. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. It disgusts me. Modernise. Replace kings, queens, bishops and all that bollocks with TV personalities. Newsreader, reality TV star, cartoon animal, etc. Go for less provocative colours, blue and yellow stripes taking on magenta, for example, with no one making the first move. That way no one gets killed. There are no misogynistic sacrifices, and onlookers just as quickly fall asleep, thus nullifying any claims that the game has gone woke. I hope I have pricked your extremely bigoted consciences and forced you into action. I challenge you to a game of restructured chess, where my first move, were I allowed to make one, would be Muppet to Hairy Biker 4. Thank you in advance for bringing chess into the modern age by adopting my principles. I expect a knighthood, which will of course be renamed a quiz show hosthood, for my services to your pathetic little war game. Checkmate.
Bravo, sir. Bravo. That's stellar. That is really stellar.
Thank you. Right, the next one. This is new, and it's a bit different. It's called Routine. It's another one of those days, isn't it? A day just like all the others, in which you wake up early, have a breakfast that is apparently good for you, but tastes like cardboard in water, or skimmed milk, as some people insist on calling it. Then you go to earn your keep, to put that cardboard on the table, and secretly fantasise about lining up your colleagues ready for the firing squad, and then looking away because the sight of blood makes you feel a bit queasy, and that you actually quite fancy that one in accounts. Then you're jolted back into the real world, where that one in accounts actually thinks you're pretty creepy, and you realise you still have hours and hours and hours of soul-destroying boredom ahead of you before you can be differently bored at home. We've all been there, haven't we? But it doesn't have to be like that. No, you can change things. Quit the job before they sack you. Have that fried breakfast you crave every morning. Take up the career we all long for, shoplifting. But be ethical about it. No small independent businesses, just the big supermarket chains, high-end jewellers, etc. Be daring. Drink full fat milk and spend your life as leisure time, boozing, taking drugs, shagging. In short, be a sinner. You may never be a Wimbledon champion, but you'll have a ball and make a hell of a racket. That is, you will have a ball until the doctor puts you on statins, tells you to change your diet and get more exercise, and sends you off to rehab. And you will ignore your doctor, carry on as before, and then live to be 104. The young uns will ask you, what is your secret? And you will misunderstand and tell them about the bodies buried in your back garden. They will go away to their boring routine, singing your praises, marvelling at the sharpness of your mind. Thank you. So that's that
Bravo.
one.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Right, the next one is a political thing. Yeah. Uh, I mean, these days, I mean, I wrote this some time ago, and these days, the biggest danger to anything sensible is reform and Nigel Farage. But this was written when the Conservatives were still, the opposition. And it's called the Tory mantra. And it applies equally to reformers as well. Today, I will think and write like a Tory, a Badenoch acolyte, a rich and bloated parasite for whom money is glory. Naturally, it needs to be rubbish, metaphorically thuggish, and show no regard for decency. Indeed, I decided recently that if you could be classed as poor, you are worthless scum and don't deserve art, because you are dumb and nothing can be done for you. You should be kept apart from the cultured few. You should be standing in the queue for handouts of donated food. Forget poetry, forget art, forget a decent start for your children. If they don't starve, the fires will kill them. Because we put profit before sensibility. We look after the interests of the rich and the nobility. The future is not our responsibility, just like refugees. They will bring Great Britain to its knees. So drown, baby, drown. Burn, baby, burn. Maintaining our wealth is our only concern. To keep out the lefties, you know what to do. Do what the millionaires tell you to do. And now I'm off to a banquet paid for by you. So, and in a similar theme, a very much shorter one, this is a Tory tanker. Don't let the future of our children concern you. Vote Conservative. Barriers made of banknotes will protect them from the storms. So yeah, this is a bit of the serious bit of the set. And this is the last serious one, I think, coming up now. And this is one that I wrote. It's one of those that just, it came into my head when I woke up in the morning. I just wrote it down and it was finished. So I don't really know where it came from, but it's called Spinning. There's not much point in me talking. There's not much point in you talking to me when you know I don't listen. Sure, I hear noises purporting to be words, and it's definitely your voice. But the sound shatters the glass, exploding its nothing into nowhere. I don't hate you. Hate is as pointless as those noises, your efforts to fill the void when the disconnect dances wildly in hobnail boots a size or two too small. So let's just slowly drift away. You win frustration because no one listens, and I win loneliness because no one talks. But we do it on our own terms, winning, proud, our heads spinning too quickly for our bodies to keep up, and no one else is to blame for our bliss. So yeah, so now I'm definitely going to change the tone slightly. I won't bother giving you the title to this one, I'll just go straight into it. My neighbour sneezes like he's just had his gonads put through a bacon slicer. The noise is terrifying. When I first moved in, I called the police because I thought someone was being murdered. And the copper laughed and said if they had £1 for every time they'd been called out because Herbert was sneezing, we would have a properly funded police force and they would be able to investigate robberies and everything. I hate it when people talk nonsense. He gets done for a breach of the peace every time he gets a cold. Rumour has it he got the flu once and his dog exploded. I'm not sure how that would work, but I do sometimes see him dragging a box of fireworks on a lead as if he was hoping for a replay. My other neighbour thinks he's Donald Trump. So I had him shot by Herbert. Unfortunately, he sneezed as he pulled the trigger. And not only did he only shoot half his ear off, but lots of cats were blown into orbit. The ear miraculously grew back within a week, but the cats are now approaching Mars. I wish I'd listened to those who warned me that this is a dodgy neighbourhood, but eggs were cheap at the corner shop, and that drew me in. I like a nice cheap egg. But alas, all the roosters caught the flu off Herbert, and I can't afford eggs anymore. Fuck my life. And that was called Achoo. And I'll tell you where that came from. I do like surreal stuff and nonsense. And that came about one day when I was I do have a few medical conditions and I was in a lot of pain this one particular day and I was on strong painkillers. And my neighbour does have a very distinctive sneeze. And I was sitting there in the stupor thinking, I must write something. I must write something just, to liven myself up a little bit. And just at that moment, I heard my neighbour sneeze, and so that's where that came from. It's a very, very weird noise. So, yeah, right. Next up, this is written from the point of view of a Brit, but you'll get the references anyway, I would think. Certainly most of them. It's a long time since I wrote this, and I've just rediscovered it. So, this is a brief history of the 21st century, written from a different and mainly British viewpoint. So you might find that names change and different people are in different places. The 20th century started badly for Vicky Pollard, who croaked after 64 years on the throne, allowing Edward Scissorhands to become king. He was blunted 9 years later and succeeded by Curious George. George's reign had its moments, 2 years in, Captain Pugwash drove the Titanic into an iceberg, which was a bit careless. And the following year, Emily Quackfaster interfered with the King's horse. In 1914, World War One kicked off, following the assassination of Fred Flintstone, and things got a bit messy. Nothing much happened in Britain in the 1920s, other than Yogi Bear inventing television. But in Chicago, Larry the Cucumber was being a bit of a shit, until he was banged up for tax evasion in 1931. A lesson for Mrs. Sunak, maybe. The 30s sort of came and went until Humpty Dumpty declared war on Germany and SpongeBob SquarePants invaded Poland. Thankfully, it didn't go to penalties. After the war, things got a bit boring, but 1949 was a swine, with Fozzie Bear becoming the big cheese in China, and Dick Dastardly becoming the firstborn of the future Queen Leah. Dick went on to have an ill-fated marriage which resulted in him accepting Ron Weasley into the family, but he eventually found happiness with Champion the Wonder Horse. The 50s pretty much disappeared down the toilet, but in the 60s along came the Beatles to cheer us up, with Thomas the Tank Engine on drums. The highlight of the 1970s, other than the Winter of Discontent, was probably Inspector Clouseau joining the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad. That's how shit the 1970s were. But then, Marge Simpson fucked it all up by becoming Prime Minister in 1979. The 1980s were a desolate wasteland of hopelessness and despair thanks to Marge. But in the 90s saw the emergence of the Spice Girls, Hilda Ogden, Ina Sharples, Nora Batty and Moaning Myrtle, and the Beatles' tribute band called Oasis, led by Beavis and Butthead. Lord Voldemort led New Labour to power in the 1997 election. The end of a lot of things, but not war crimes or rampant capitalism, obviously. So that's that one. Yeah, I realised as I was reading that most of those are very British references, but yeah, I do like that one actually.
No, we get it. We get it. At least some of us do anyway.
Right, the next one. Obviously, every day a lot of things happen, but conversely, a lot of things don't happen. And we don't talk about the things that don't happen because they haven't happened. And that sort of led me to this. It's called Not Happening. Politicians with manifestos which actually tell the truth. A former Jeremy Kyle guest still with at least one tooth. The Daily Mail stocked in the aisle with all the other toilet roll. A new age of government bereft of Eton arseholes. The banishment of those snobs who are stuffy and elitist. Cola and cakes and sugary sweets, but no type 2 diabetes. Footballers and poets swapping bank accounts. £1 million slam winner gleefully announced. A reduction in our clothing costs with inseparable socks that don't get lost. Anti-vaxxers dying out, protected as they were from gout. Fat cat tax properly regulated, with Dodgers being denigrated, nurses and carers venerated, and Katie Hopkins emigrated. If some of these lines have made you smile, if it's your idea of bliss, enjoy it for a little while and then consider this. Still the world keeps turning and things continue not to happen, and we repeat the trick of never learning as generations pass on the baton. So, with this shocking far-right boom, sit back, ignore the cries. They'll probably never come for you, and you won't even realise. Thank you. And I've got one more. And
Please
this is my letter, playing with my letters. This is I make out that I wrote this as an ordinary poem on a new keyboard, and it wasn't until I came to read it as an event that I realised that the letter G kept appearing at random in the poem, and sometimes it completely changed the meaning of the words. It goes like this. I'm writing this in the Wiltshire town of Swindon, with my hair in a ponytail, wishing I was in Longdong or Lisbon or New York. I am thinking about radio and how mangy old presenters end up on radio too. I don't listen to that station myself, but I imagine they play a lot of old mugsy, like the Big Apples, the Rolling Stonges, Rick Ghastly, Simon Le Bon, U2 and Bongo, the Beach Bogies, Dirge Straits. They may even stretch to the Spice Gurgles, and more modern boring stuff like Cold Plague. Not to mention Rungan Keating, who sounds like he could get himself in a spot of bother, as does the Scottish writer Grabby Burns, who was not as good as Wigleham Shakespeare. Back to the music though, and some of those bands are those you could have listened to while driving your Hillman Gimp or your Ford Ganglia down the Dougal carriageway back in the day. And that's fine until you broke down and you had to call the RAC or the Gaga. I could be winging and dinging with a beautiful woman now, or at least eating banoffee pie and watching Monty Python. Instead, I'm dogging this. Anyway, I seem to be going around in circles now, and all I know about circles is that the area of one is pig R square, and for some reason that makes me think of David Cameron. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Bravo, sir. Bravo. Bravo. Wonderful set. Wonderful
Thank you.
set. May I offer you one or two of my little political pieces that, granted, while we have different villains at play, they're cut from the same rich cloth, if you will.
Absolutely. And your villains affect us and everybody else as well.
Sadly, yes, they do. So let me read two little pieces for you that I hope you'll find at least a little amusing, given the nature of the beast. Okay, so from my politics file, let's see here. This harkens back to the Bush era, but sadly, like I said, it's still too valid for my taste. It's called Homeland Defense. We never had Homeland Defense until this crop of Republicans decided that Homeland, like the old Nazi slogan, was a thing. So this is called Homeland Defense, back from 2001, a real vintage piece. Between the kings of Saudi oil, who Shell and Exxon dare not despoil, and those of Wall Street's fiscal toil, where betting against the working man guarantees the stock's demand, and Desert Prince with generous eye holds court intense, where gas station cards shall pay the rent. Does the oily hand of G.H. Bush show the old CIA man still in control? Pass the ID cards, not a fakin'. This way from American icon shaken. Your face will now be pre-recorded and all your flights will now be boarded. Arm the pilot, the stewardess too. Next to the pillow and the barf bags fun, all the passengers now will be given guns. Ah, for a shootout in the airy blue. Oh, what just a day can do. I picture this Stewie, tray in her hand, confronted by the wanted man, tosses the tray into his face, spins on her arm, and kicks him trace. He rolls across the cart to a Boy Scout troop who truss him up and steal his boots. His arms behind his back now tied, and they bounce him over to the choir side, who pummel, pillage, then retire, and all those who were watching were inspired. Then a group of Civitan asked for a few fingers from his hand, but the brownie troop wants his bushy beard. You should have heard the things I heard. Then an old monk, Jesuit, gives him twice a goodly kick, and the secretary gets him with her bick. Then the pilot and co-pilot were vying for priority. They did submit their decision to the vote of the majority. Some wanted to toss him right out the door, but a cloister of nuns still wanted some fun. They dragged him back to the airplane's tail, and the rugby team ran him back to the gale, up to the galley where they banged his head 2 or 3 times on the oven's lid. Then a group of congressional aides in first class pulled every hair from out of his ass. A covey of comedians dove right in with a left and a right to his nose and his chin. A group of traders down from Duluth pushed him and mashed him into the roof. Some ceiling tiles in the overhead bin broke when they tried to stuff him in. But let this be remembered and never forget. Don't ever wait till your library book's late. So some of that, over harsh justice, which seems to be enjoyed by the rugged conservatives of our day.
Yeah, I'm glad
And
I don't borrow library books in your country.
okay, and then there's one more I think you may find mildly amusing, something a little more contemporary. Okay, let's see here. Oh, let's go to time. Okay, this is a little more lighthearted. You know, with the stresses of our modern age, people turn to solutions to calm their troubled souls and ease their worried minds. So I wrote this in the way that I found my own solution. Some people have support cats, some have support dogs. I myself have a support stegosaurus. I need my special support stegosaurus. And so political news informs us the plates on his back protect us all from attack. Those sharpened spikes on his tail protect us all without fail. His cranium's thinneth, useful for getting ineth. He slips under the doorways into meetings which otherwise wouldn't be seeneth. But the thing I can contest, and surely you cannot stretch and distendeth, old Steggy is leggy, and the plates on his spine will gently, no doubt, poke and prod your mind with their glimmery, shimmery shine, like a goblet of the finest claret or some other such wine. Can you bear it? Munching slowly his savory salad, easing all lethargy, erasing and ministering to each misery mine, perhaps with a ballad, the name's claims sure not mine. My Steggy is leggy and is hard to refuse, and a demon of demolition with his telephonic ironical blues. BB and Elon have studied with him, so davishingly devastating and debonair, and betwixt us both sure to win. I get my dare. Thank you, my friend. Well, Clive, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, sir, learning a little bit
Likewise.
about your wonderful self. I wish you every success and enjoyment of your free time.
I'm enjoying it, but at the moment I'm enjoying writing. I'm doing a lot more, I am doing a lot more serious writing as well. I mean, at the moment I'm writing what will either be a short story or I may even stretch to a novel. Um, but I probably doubt it'll stretch to a novel, but it'll certainly be a fair size short story. And it's completely different to, like a short story I had published recently. There's nothing funny about it at all. I mean, I actually got told off doing it on Zoom without giving trigger warnings because, which is fair enough. I mean, I normally do, and that night it just didn't occur to me, and it's a story that involves somebody who was murdered coming back and exacting revenge in a pretty gruesome way on the
Hmm.
person that murdered them.
Oh my.
And yeah, so I got told off for doing that without giving a content warning. And the one I'm doing now is again, it's a little bit spooky, which surprises me. I never thought I would write spooky or ghost stories, but they seem to be occurring to me now. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying it, and I'm travel. I haven't done as much traveling as I would like. Again, health problems have sort of messed up plans a little bit, but I'm in a slam up north tomorrow, and then I've got a gig in the Midlands on Tuesday next week.
Please
Yeah,
mention your book.
I've got a few books actually, but they're all available on Amazon.
Okay.
If you go to my latest one was called Dig This and Smile. I like to take the titles of two poems and put them into the title. So in this one, there was one called Dig This and one called The Smile. So that one's called Dig This and Smile. And the one before that, which is actually my favourite of all the books I've written so far, is Musical Hamsters, Much Bigger Issues.
Excellent.
Uh,
Excellent. Yeah.
so if you just search Clive Oseman on Amazon, you'll.
Brother Clive, thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And you take care.
And you.
See you around.
Yeah, see you soon.